What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to another YouTube video. I'm your boy Lil Black Mario, and I'm back at it again with another series. So this new series I've been running is called Starlord Adventures. So essentially what it's doing in this series, it is picking up where Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 left off, where we see Starlord go back to Earth, and he essentially is trying to figure himself out. So what I have this opening up with is it's the events after Annihilation. So this was like a Marvel series where essentially it was kind of like showing what happened after the first movie, so going back to them like joining up. But the way how I'm writing this series is I'm writing it where Starlord is joining the new Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're trying to figure out like what's going on with Earth. So I'm having this new alien species attack Earth. So what I having as the opening scene is I have this dude which is called Jason, and he's from Spartax. And essentially what happens is he's on this ship and he crashes into Earth like in this kind of like farm field. And when he crashes in this farm field, this woman, she like comes across him and she doesn't know what to think about it, but he kind of like falls out of the ship and he's like really badly injured. And what happens is that he's like, hey, like I need help. So we essentially don't know why, like we essentially don't know what events took place after that ship, before the ship had crash landed. So what's going on is she's trying to figure out like where he came from, what happened, why he's so badly injured. So what I have is I have him essentially trying to gather his bearings, and she's trying to help him out as much as he can. So in the first opening scene, what I have is I have him waking up kind of like in his house farm, where essentially he's sleeping in his bedroom, and the woman that essentially came across him is essentially sitting down, and she has like a shotgun in her lap because she's trying to defend herself because she doesn't know whether or not he's good or evil. So what I have is him waking up and then him asking her like, hey, where am I at? Hey, what happened to my ship? Different things like that. And she's essentially saying like, hey, before I answer any of your questions, you're going to have to answer my questions. And she's essentially asking him like, hey, where you came from? Why did your ship crash in the Earth? Like, you don't look human, but like, you know what I'm saying? So what I have as the second scene is I have him essentially learning the ways of Earth, and essentially the woman, she came to be Meredith, was essentially Star-Lord's mother. And what happens is that they essentially bond together and they eventually get into a relationship, and it essentially shows them spending more time together, him teaching her about his ways on his planet, her teaching the ways of Earth, and then them eventually having a child together. And essentially, child was Star-Lord. So in the third scene, what I have is I have him, Peter himself, sitting on the porch and him reading like this science fiction like comic book. And in the comic book, it's essentially talking about space and like different planets and stuff like that. And his mom, she comes out of the door and she's like, hey, like I told you to stop reading those things, because he's like, oh, he wants to go adventure out into space. And because Jason had left his mom, which is Meredith, she's hesitant for him to go into space because she knows that his father didn't want to stay around, even though Jason had told her that he had to go back because he's the ruler of Spartax. So essentially I have him sitting down and him saying like, hey, like I want to know more about different planets and I want to learn about the solar system and different stuff like that. And she keeps telling him like, no, like you shouldn't be learning about these things. So what I have is I have him kind of going back into a flashback. So as Peter's talking to his mom and they're sitting down and she's trying to explain to him like why she doesn't feel like he should learn about Earth, there's a flashback of him in school. And when he's in school, it's essentially recess. And what happens is that he's sitting down with his friend and they're looking over the science fiction comic book. And essentially this bully comes up and is bullying this other kid. And essentially what happens is that Star-Lord, he essentially stands up for the kid that's being bullied. And in him being bullied, his mom is essentially saying to him like, hey, like you should stand up and be your own person, like you don't have to follow in the footsteps of others, and being somebody that's more protective into that manly role. So what I have after that is I have him essentially relaying the story to the Guardians of the Galaxy, because what happens is that it's Rocket, Groot, all the other new members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and essentially wait a minute, but I thought that Eagle was your father. And essentially he's like, no, I believe that Eagle was my father, but now it realizes that it's Jason instead of it being Eagle from the Guardians of the Galaxy, the second one. And then what essentially happens is that you see Iron Man in the background. So for this story, I have Iron Man joining the Avengers, and essentially what I did in this story is I had Iron Man being the kind of Iron Lad instead of it being Iron Man. So essentially it's an Iron Man from a different universe joining this Guardians of the Galaxy and essentially trying to figure out, all right, what's going on in this universe and how can I help out as much as I can.